Princess Kiravan walked quietly through the crystal halls of her family's palace. The walls glowed with soft blue light from the sacred stones that powered their entire world. She had always felt proud of these crystals. They were more than just power sources. They were the heart of Solari culture, passed down through thousands of years. But tonight something felt wrong. She heard voices coming from the council chamber. Her father's advisors were meeting in secret again. This had been happening more and more lately. They always stopped talking when she entered rooms. They gave her fake smiles and changed subjects quickly. Kiravan pressed herself against the doorway and listened carefully. What she heard made her blood run cold. "The Draknari military will pay triple the normal price," said advisor Veltok, her father's oldest friend. "They need our crystals for their new weapons." "But the crystals are sacred," whispered another voice. "The people will never accept this." Veltok laughed harshly. "The people don't need to know. We tell them the crystals are being stored for safety. Meanwhile, we become the richest empire in the galaxy." "What about Princess Kiravan?" She asks too many questions. "Leave her to me," Veltok replied. "She's young and idealistic, easy to handle." Kiravan felt sick. The Draknari were their ancient enemies. They had fought wars against her people for centuries. Now her own advisors wanted to sell them the very crystals that could be used to destroy Solari worlds. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. Her father had been ill for months. He barely left his chambers anymore. These advisors were running everything in his name, and they were betraying everything their people believed in. The next morning, Kiravan demanded a meeting with the full council. She walked into the chamber with her head held high, trying to hide her fear. "I know what you're planning," she announced. "The deal with the Draknari, the crystal sales, everything." The advisors looked at each other nervously. Veltok stepped forward with his usual fake smile. "Princess, I think you've misunderstood something. Perhaps you had a bad dream." "Don't lie to me," Kiravan said firmly. "I heard you talking last night. You're selling our sacred crystals to our enemies. This is treason against our own people." The smile disappeared from Veltok's face. "Careful, Princess. Those are dangerous words. The only dangerous thing here is what you're doing. I'm going to tell my father everything. Then I'm going to tell our people the truth." Veltok's eyes turned cold. "I'm afraid that won't be possible." Within hours, everything changed. Guards loyal to Veltok surrounded Kiravan's chambers. They accused her of planning to murder her own father. They said she wanted to steal the throne and destroy their empire. The evidence appeared overnight. Fake documents with her signature. Witnesses who claimed they heard her making threats. Even a poison vial hidden in her room that she had never seen before. "The princess has been consumed by greed and ambition," Veltok announced to the shocked court. "She must be removed from the palace for everyone's safety." Kiravan realized how clever and ruthless these advisors really were. They had turned her own words against her. Now she looked like the traitor instead of them. As the guards led her away, she saw the fear in the servants' eyes. They had known her since childhood, but now they weren't sure what to believe. The lies were spreading fast. Her own people, the ones she had tried to protect, now saw her as their enemy. 3 days after her arrest, Veltok visited Kiravan in her prison cell. He wore the same fake smile that had fooled her for years. "Good news, Princess," he said cheerfully. "We've decided not to execute you for treason." Kiravan looked up from her cold stone bench. "How generous of you. Instead, you'll be exiled to a diplomatic station on the Outer Rim, a quiet life away from politics. You can think about your mistakes and maybe find peace." She knew he was lying. Veltok never did anything out of kindness, but she also knew she had no choice. "Fine. When do I leave?" "Tomorrow morning. Captain Zorak will escort you personally. He's one of our most trusted officers." The next day, 4 royal guards in full armor came for her. Captain Zorak was a tall soldier she had known since childhood. He had taught her how to use a plasma blade when she was 12. Now he wouldn't even look at her. "Captain," she said as they walked to the transport ship, "you know me. Do you really believe I tried to kill my father?" Zorak's jaw tightened. But he stayed silent. The other guards pushed her forward roughly. The ship was small and uncomfortable. They locked her in a tiny passenger compartment with no windows. For hours she felt the ship jumping through hyperspace. She tried to count the jumps to figure out where they were taking her. After what felt like a full day, the ship finally stopped. Through the thin walls, she could hear the guards talking in low voices. Something in their tone made her nervous. The compartment door opened. "Time to go, Princess," Zorak said coldly. They led her to the exit ramp. When the door opened, Kiravan gasped. This wasn't a diplomatic station. This was a dead world. The sky was a sickly yellow color. Strange purple rocks jutted up from cracked ground. The air itself looked wrong, shimmering with toxic gases. In the distance, she could see the remains of some ancient civilization, just broken towers and empty ruins. "Where are we?" she demanded. "Veltar," Zorak replied. "Your new home." Her heart sank. Veltar was famous throughout the galaxy as a poison world. Nothing could live here for more than a few days without proper protection. The very air would slowly kill any organic being. "You can't leave me here. This is murder." Zorak finally looked at her. For just a moment she saw pain in his eyes. "I have my orders." They gave her a small emergency pack, basic food capsules, water recyclers, and a breathing mask that might last 48 hours. Then they handed her a communication device. "This will call for rescue when you're ready to confess your crimes," one of the guards said. Kiravan activated the device immediately. "I confess nothing because I did nothing wrong. Send a rescue ship now." The guard smiled and crushed the communicator under his boot. "Oops, looks like it malfunctioned. Wait," she screamed as they walked back up the ramp. "Zorak, you know this is wrong." The captain stopped at the top of the ramp. His shoulders shook slightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. Then the ship sealed shut and lifted off, leaving her alone on the toxic world. Kiravan stood in the poisonous wind, watching her people abandon her to die. The breathing mask already felt uncomfortable. She could taste metal in the air even through the filters. She had maybe 2 days before the mask failed completely. 2 days to find shelter, water, and some miracle that could keep her alive. Looking at the dead landscape around her, she realized Veltok had planned this perfectly. No one would ever find her body on this forgotten world. Li Te-ho had been alone in space for 3 months. His small survey ship, the Sol Dawn, drifted quietly through the Kethmoran system while he mapped mineral deposits for future Earth colonies. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. He sipped his instant coffee and watched the scanner. Screens. Most planets out here were dead rocks with nothing interesting, but the pay was good, and Te-ho enjoyed the peace and quiet. Back on Earth, Sol was too crowded and noisy for his taste. The computer beeped softly. Another planet to scan. This one was marked as Veltar in the star charts. The database said it was completely lifeless due to toxic atmosphere. Still, Earth Colonial Command wanted readings on everything. Te-ho activated the deep sensors and started his usual routine. Atmospheric composition, mineral density, radiation levels, all standard stuff. He was already thinking about lunch when something caught his attention. The bioscanner was showing a faint reading. That was impossible. According to every record, nothing could survive on Veltar's surface. "Computer, run bioscan again," he said. The same result appeared. Weak life signs, definitely organic, somewhere near the planet's equator. The reading was so faint it was barely above background noise. Te-ho frowned. The scanner might be malfunctioning. These old survey ships weren't exactly top of the line. But what if it wasn't a mistake? What if something was actually alive down there? Earth's first contact protocols were very clear. Any signs of alien life had to be reported immediately. No exceptions. But the nearest Earth base was 2 weeks away by hyperspace. If something was alive on that poison world, it might not survive 2 weeks. He drummed his fingers on the console, thinking. His grandmother always told him to follow his heart when logic failed. Right now his heart was telling him to investigate. Sol Dawn, to any vessel, he broadcast on all frequencies. "This is human survey ship requesting assistance near Veltar. System, anyone receiving?" Static filled the speakers. He was completely alone out here. Te-ho made his decision. He fired up the engines and headed for Veltar's surface. The ship's computer immediately started warning him about atmospheric toxicity and radiation dangers. I know, he muttered. putting on his environmental suit. Just keep the air recyclers running. The planet looked even worse up close. Sickly yellow clouds swirled around cracked mountains. Strange purple crystals jutted from the ground like broken teeth. This place was definitely trying to kill anything that came near it. The bioscanner guided him to a small valley filled with ancient ruins. As he flew lower, Tejo saw something that made his breath catch. A figure, in what looked like a spacesuit, was stumbling between the broken buildings. He landed the Sol Dawn on a flat area and grabbed his emergency medical kit. The figure had collapsed behind a fallen wall. As Tejo got closer, he realized this wasn't human. The being was tall and slender with pale blue skin. Her features were elegant but alien, with large eyes that were now closed. Her breathing apparatus was clearly failing, making harsh, rasping sounds. She was dying. Tejo didn't hesitate. He scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she was. Her skin felt cold even through his gloves. Whatever species she was, she definitely wasn't built for this toxic environment. Back on his ship, he laid her on the medical bay table. The ship's computer couldn't identify her biology, but the basic readings were clear. Severe poisoning, dehydration, and respiratory failure. "Come on," Tejo whispered, adjusting the oxygen flow. "Don't die on me now." He had no idea who she was or how she got here, but someone had abandoned her on this death world, and that made him angry. Humans didn't leave people behind. For the first 2 days, Kiravan drifted in and out of consciousness. Tejo barely left the medical bay, constantly checking her vital signs and adjusting the treatment protocols. The ship's computer had never dealt with alien biology before, so he was basically guessing about everything. He fed her small amounts of water through a tube and monitored her breathing. Her pale blue skin slowly regained some color, which he hoped was a good sign. Sometimes she would mumble words in a language that sounded like music, but he couldn't understand any of it. On the 3rd morning, her large golden eyes finally opened and focused on him. Kiravan jerked upright, panic flooding her face. She tried to speak, but only raspy sounds came out. Her eyes darted around the small medical bay, clearly confused and frightened. "Hey, it's okay," Tejo said gently, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe now." She obviously didn't understand his words, but something in his tone seemed to calm her slightly. She pointed to herself and said something. That sounded like Kiravan. "Kiravan," Tejo repeated carefully. "That's your name?" He pointed to himself. "Tejo, I'm Tejo." She nodded slowly, then touched her throat and winced. The toxic air had damaged her vocal cords badly. Tejo brought her some warm soup he'd heated up. Earth food probably wasn't ideal for her species, but it was better than nothing. She sniffed it cautiously, then took a small sip. Her eyes widened in surprise, and she looked at him with something like gratitude. Over the next few days, they developed a simple way to communicate using gestures and drawings. Tejo showed her pictures on his tablet computer. Earth, humans, his survey mission. She seemed fascinated by images of Sol's crowded streets and green parks. When it was her turn, Kiravan drew pictures of her own world. Beautiful crystal, cities, tall blue-skinned people, and what looked like a royal palace. Then her drawings turned dark. She sketched angry faces, chains, and herself being pushed onto a ship. Finally, she drew Veltar and herself alone, dying. "They left you there to die," Tejo said quietly. He didn't need to understand her language to see the betrayal in her eyes. She nodded, tears rolling down her blue cheeks. What amazed Tejo was how quickly she started helping around the ship. Even though she was still recovering, she insisted on cleaning up after meals and organizing his scattered equipment. When she saw him struggling with a broken scanner, she examined it carefully and somehow fixed it with a few precise adjustments. She was clearly from an advanced civilization, probably royalty based on her elegant mannerisms. Yet here she was, grateful for basic kindness from a complete stranger. One evening, as they shared dinner in the ship's tiny galley, Kiravan tried to give him her bracelet. It was made of the same glowing crystal material he'd seen in her drawings. Obviously valuable, probably priceless. "No, no," Tejo said. gently pushing it back toward her. "I don't need payment. I helped you because it was the right thing to do." She stared at him for a long moment, clearly confused. She pointed to the bracelet, then to him, then made gestures that seemed to indicate trade or payment. Tae-ho shook his head and smiled. Friends don't charge friends for help. The concept seemed to puzzle her deeply. She kept looking at him like he was some kind of alien creature, which he supposed he was from her perspective. That night, Tae-ho found her sitting by the observation window, staring out at the stars. She had been crying again. When she noticed him, she pointed to herself, then made a gesture like cutting her own throat. "Your people tried to kill you," he said softly. She nodded, then pointed at him and made a gesture like protecting or sheltering. "But I saved you instead." Another nod. Then she did something that surprised him. She took his hand and pressed it to her forehead in what was clearly some kind of formal gesture of respect. Tae-ho realized she was trying to understand why a stranger would risk everything to save her when her own people had thrown her away. After a week together, Tae-ho and Keiravan had settled into a comfortable routine. She was getting stronger every day, and her voice was finally healing. She could speak a few Korean words now, and he was learning some basic Solari phrases. They spent evenings looking at star charts, trying to figure out where her homeworld was located. Everything changed when the Seoul Dawn's proximity alarms started screaming. Tae-ho rushed to the cockpit and checked the sensors. 3 large ships had just dropped out of hyperspace nearby. They were sleek and dangerous looking, nothing like the peaceful vessels in Earth's database. "Unknown ships, this is human survey vessel Seoul Dawn," he broadcast. "Please identify yourselves." The response came immediately in accented but clear English. "Human vessel, you are harboring a criminal wanted by the Solari Empire. Surrender." Princess Keiravan immediately or face the consequences. Tae-ho's blood ran cold. He looked back toward the medical bay where Keiravan was resting. These weren't rescue ships. They were here to finish what they started on Veltar. "I don't know what you're talking about," he lied. "I'm conducting a mineral survey. There are no other beings aboard my ship." A harsh laugh came through the speakers. "Do not insult our intelligence, human. Our sensors detect Solari life signs on your vessel. You have 60 seconds to comply." Keiravan appeared in the cockpit doorway. She had heard the transmissions and understood what was happening. Her face went pale as she looked at the ships on the scanner. "Veltok's hunters," she whispered in heavily accented English. "They kill me. Kill you too." Tae-ho looked at the massive warships surrounding his tiny survey craft. Each one was probably 10 times larger than the Seoul Dawn. Their weapons could vaporize his ship in seconds. Any reasonable person would have surrendered immediately. Instead, Tae-ho activated the ship's defensive systems and charged up the engines. "Human vessel, you have 10 seconds to comply." "Yeah?" Tae-ho spoke into the communicator. "Here's my compliance." He slammed the throttle forward, sending the Seoul Dawn diving toward Veltar's surface at maximum speed. The warships immediately gave chase, their powerful engines easily keeping pace. "Why?" Keiravan asked, gripping her seat as the ship shook from atmospheric entry. "Why you not give me? You die for nothing." Tae-ho glanced at her while fighting the controls. "Nobody deserves to be murdered by their own people. Not you, not anyone." Plasma bolts from the pursuing ships lit up the sky around them. Tae-ho threw the Seoul Dawn into a series of wild maneuvers, using the planet's toxic storms as cover. His little ship was much more agile than the big warships, but it wouldn't matter for long. "There," he pointed to a deep canyon system ahead. "We can lose them in there." The Seoul Dawn screamed between towering rock walls, so close that Tae-ho could see individual crystals jutting from the canyon sides. Behind them, the larger ships had to slow down to avoid crashing, but it was only buying them time. Eventually, the hunters would corner them. "Tae-ho," Keiravan said quietly. "Land ship, I go to them, you live." "Not happening. You no understand. I am already dead. My people want me gone. But you have life. Have family on Earth?" Tae-ho thought about his grandmother in Seoul, probably worried because he hadn't called in weeks. Then he thought about what she would say if she knew he'd abandoned someone who needed help. She'd disown him. "My grandmother taught me something," he said, pulling the ship into another impossible turn. "She said the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy, it's what they do when it's hard." Another volley of plasma fire barely missed them. The canyon was getting narrower ahead. "This is very hard," Kiravan observed. Teho grinned despite their situation. "Then I guess we'll find out what kind of person I really am." The hunters were closing in, but Teho wasn't giving up. He'd rather crash into these canyon walls than hand over someone who trusted him. That's what humans did. They protected people who couldn't protect themselves, even when it seemed impossible. The Soul Dawn crashed into a narrow cave system deep in the canyon. Teho managed to land without exploding, but the ship's engines were completely destroyed. Smoke filled the cockpit as emergency lights flickered on and off. "We have to move," he said, grabbing his emergency pack. "They'll be here soon." Kiravan looked at the damaged ship sadly. "You're home, I am sorry." "It's just metal and circuits," Teho replied, helping her into an environmental suit. "You're alive. That's what matters." They climbed out of the wreckage, just as the hunter ships landed nearby. Through the toxic mist, Teho could see armed figures in advanced battle armor moving toward their position. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They moved like professional killers. "This way," he whispered, leading Kiravan deeper into the cave system. The caves were filled with strange purple crystals that gave off a faint glow. Some passages were so narrow they had to crawl. Others opened into vast chambers filled with toxic gas pools. It was like navigating through an alien nightmare. Behind them they could hear the hunters' heavy footsteps and electronic scanning equipment. "Princess," a voice echoed through the caves in Solari language. "Come out peacefully. We will make your death quick." Kiravan translated in a whisper. Teho's jaw tightened. "Over my dead body." They reached a junction where 3 tunnels split off in different directions. Teho examined the walls carefully, then smiled. "I have an idea." He pulled out his portable mining laser, normally used for taking rock samples. "These crystals are unstable in toxic atmosphere. If we heat them up, they explode." Kiravan finished, understanding immediately. Teho quickly carved symbols into the crystal walls of 2 tunnels, making them look like ancient alien writing. Then he and Kiravan hid in the 3rd tunnel and waited. The hunters arrived minutes later. Through their helmet radios, Teho could hear them arguing about which direction to go. "The markings indicate she went this way," one said, heading toward the trapped tunnel. "No, these symbols are older. She went down here," another argued, choosing the 2nd trapped passage. "Perfect." The hunters split up. Teho waited until both groups were deep in the tunnels, then fired his laser at the unstable crystals they had marked. The explosions were enormous, collapsing both passages and trapping the hunters under tons of rock. "How you know this work?" Kiravan asked as they moved deeper into the cave system. "I didn't," Teho admitted. "But my grandfather fought in the Korean War. He always said when you're outnumbered, make the enemy fight on your terms, not theirs." They emerged from the caves onto a high plateau overlooking the toxic valley. More hunter ships were landing. Below, disgorging additional troops. Teho counted at least 20 soldiers in advanced armor. "Too many," Kiravan said. "We cannot fight them all." Teho studied the landscape. The plateau was surrounded by tall spires of unstable rock, weathered by centuries of toxic storms. An idea began forming in his mind. "We don't fight them," he said. "We let Veltar fight them for us." Using materials from his emergency pack, Teho rigged up a crude but effective trap. He connected his suit's power cells to create small explosive charges, then carefully placed them at the base of the most unstable rock spires. When the hunters tracked them to the plateau, Teho and Kiravan were waiting in plain sight. "Surrender. Now," the lead hunter called out in English. "You cannot escape." "You're right," Teho called back. "I can't outfight you. Your weapons are better. Your armor is stronger. Your ships are faster." The hunters advanced confidently, spreading out, to surround them. "But there's one thing you forgot," Teho continued, his hand hovering over the detonator. "This isn't your planet." He triggered the explosives. The rock spires collapsed in a carefully planned sequence, creating a massive landslide. The hunters scattered in panic as thousands of tons of toxic stone crashed down around them. Several were buried completely. Others found themselves trapped in narrow spaces, their advanced technology useless against simple gravity and physics. "Impossible," one hunter gasped over his radio. How did a primitive human— "We're not primitive," Tejo said into his suit's communicator. "We're creative. There's a difference." As they escaped across the devastated plateau, Kiravan looked at him with newfound respect. "Your people, they think like this, turn weakness into strength?" Tejo grinned. "It's kind of our specialty." After escaping the landslide, Tejo and Kiravan found shelter in an abandoned mining station on the far side of Veltar. The old facility still had basic power and a working long-range communicator. It was their only chance to call for help. Tejo activated the emergency beacon and waited. It took 6 hours before he finally heard a familiar voice through the static. "Sol Dawn, this is Commander Park Minsu. Tai-Ho, what the hell is going on out there? We've been getting reports of battles in your sector." "Commander," Tejo said, relief flooding through him, "I need immediate assistance and I need to speak to the Colonial Council." "The Council?" "Tejo, you're a mineral surveyor, not a diplomat. What's this about?" Tejo looked at Kiravan, who was listening intently despite not understanding the Korean conversation. "I've made first contact with an alien species, and we have a big problem." There was a long pause. "First contact? Are you serious? Protocol requires you to wait for a proper diplomatic team. Commander, there's no time for protocol. This alien is being hunted by her own people. They're trying to kill her for exposing corruption in their government. She needs asylum." "Tejo, this is way above your pay grade. And mine too, I can't just grant asylum to aliens." "Then get me someone who can," Tejo said firmly, "because I'm not letting them murder her." 2 hours later, Tejo found himself on a secure video call with 5 members of Earth's Colonial Council. These were the people who made decisions about humanity's expansion into space. They looked tired and skeptical. "Mr. Lee," said Councillor Jennifer Walsh, the head of the council, "Commander Park has briefed us on your situation. We understand you've encountered an alien refugee." "That's correct. Her name is Princess Kiravan of the Solari Empire. She discovered that her own advisors were planning to sell sacred crystals to their enemies. When she tried to expose this, they framed her for treason and left her to die." "How do we know this story is true?" asked another councillor. "This could be some kind of alien trick." Tejo felt his temper rising. "Because I've seen their hunters trying to kill her. They've been chasing us across this planet for days. Good people don't send assassins after innocent refugees. But granting asylum could start a war with this Solari Empire," another councillor pointed out. "We don't know anything about their military capabilities." Kiravan stepped into view of the camera. Despite her exhaustion and injuries, she held herself with royal dignity. She spoke in careful English, her accent making each word sound formal and important. "Honored Earth leaders," she said, bowing slightly. "I do not ask for war, I ask only for justice. My people have forgotten honor. They sell sacred things for profit. They kill those who speak truth." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "But this human, Tejo, he shows me what honor looks like. He saves stranger. He protects weak. He fights impossible odds because it is right thing to do." The councillors exchanged glances. Councillor Walsh leaned forward. "Princess, what exactly are you asking from us?" "I ask for chance to fix my people, to remove corruption and bring back honor. But I cannot do this alone. I need allies who understand justice." "And what can you offer Earth in return?" asked the skeptical councillor. Kiravan smiled sadly. "My people have technology you cannot imagine. Crystals that power entire worlds, ships that travel between stars in heartbeats, medical knowledge that could heal your worst diseases. But more than that," she gestured to Tejo, "you have something we lost. You have people who will risk everything to do what is right. Work with us, and we both become stronger." The council deliberated for 20 minutes while Tejo and Kiravan waited anxiously. Finally, Councillor Walsh returned to the screen.